Into order. Roll call. Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler. Here. Tom Buckey.
Here.
John Tracy.
Here.
Ken Bargander.
Here.
Russ Dauber.
Here.
Paul Kapla.
Here.
Andrew Rigel.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. We have two separate approvals. January 4th, 2024 regular meeting. I have a motion from Tom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from John. Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, one opposed. Oh, sorry, it was just delayed. Sorry about that. All right, and then approval of special meeting, January 27th, 2024. We have a call and a second. Tom? Sounds good. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Item number 3, identify potential conflicts of interest. Please be advised that per city policy 3.340, any member of the body shall declare a conflict if they have any interest, financial or otherwise, direct or indirect, or engaged in a business or transaction or professional activity, or incur any obligation of any nature that is a conflict with the proper discharge of the body's official duties. Do we have any conflicts? Any conflicts? Okay. Item number 4, citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments? We do. Wonderful. If you could just state your name. Yep, no worries.
Good morning, everyone.
The mic's not on.
I don't think the mic's on, so.
Oh, let's try that.
Yeah,
How's that? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Rumbalski. I am the Community Development Educator for Extension Wood County. I work very closely with Jason Greenberg, and so I'm here today in Jason's place. Wanted to share a couple of updates that we've been working on for economic development at the county level. I believe Steve has contacted Chairwoman to request that you move your next meeting on March 7th. The reason why we have made that request is because we are hosting the first Wood County Housing Summit that will be at Marshfield, at Midstate in Wisconsin Rapids, with a satellite location if needed at Marshfield's Midstate campus. And that event is really designed to engage citizens and engage discussion about housing in Wood County. So we know that housing is really a cross-sector, cross-socioeconomic status challenge in Wood County. We are hearing that it affects employers, it affects regular citizens, those that are trying to relocate to the area. And so we're going to have a day just really to dive into those housing issues and brainstorm solutions. So that summit will include some best practices sharing, so learning from other communities on what has been going well. For those that may have attended the Wisconsin Municipalities Conference, you may be familiar with the Sheboygan Falls model that they have done in Sheboygan County, which is something where employers have come to the table, a number of large employers have come to the table to create housing and subsidize housing for their employees, but also for the public at large. It's a really engaging model. Everyone who has seen it presented has come back really revved up about it. So we'll have that individual, the mayor of Sheboygan Falls, will be our keynote presenter. We'll also have a legislative panel, a representative Senator Patrick Teston and Representative Scott Krug have been confirmed. In attendance, a number of other legislators have been contacted, and we're waiting to hear back. So with that, March 7th, it's from 8:30 to 9 is networking and registration. Content starts at 9 and goes until 3:30. I hope that you will save the date and we can see you there. Registration is not live yet, but I expect that by tomorrow it will be. We're just working out a couple of the final details. And it will be $20, which includes lunch and breakfast refreshments as well. The other thing that I wanted to share related to housing is that we, with our housing task force that's planning that summit, is also planning for the housing chapter of the Wood County Comprehensive Plan. That housing chapter will be one of the 9 segments of the comprehensive plan. But in talking with Sam, who is the planner at the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, the housing chapter will be a standalone chapter, so it could be read on its own or part of the comprehensive plan. In the planning for that, and as we're discussing it, there has emerged a need for wanting to survey 3 groups of people about housing in the county. So looking at a survey of general public and residents to ask what has been their experience in trying to locate housing for both rental and purchase. And the importance of getting that data is that we can then compare that with census data. So Sam and the folks at the North Central Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission have all the numbers, right? They have the data. But we know that census data sometimes doesn't match up with the lived experience that's happening in the communities. So by getting that survey out, we'll be able to compare and contrast where things are landing with the community. But then beyond that, the team of stakeholders that's working on this has also decided that we would like to survey employers.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, my apologies. So that survey will be out soon. Please take the time to read it. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Lois. We would have been here all day is what you're saying, Lois. Okay.
Sometimes I need that.
No.
Lois, a little unruly there, Lois.
No, I appreciate it. Any other citizens' comments? Okay, moving on. Item number 5, chairperson's comments. I have none this morning other than good morning, everyone. Moving things along. Item number 6, board members' comments. Any board members' comments? Okay, we are moving things along. We'll keep this at 15 minutes, I think, today. Item number 7, Steve, this is you. Update on 205 fund balance sheet through 12/31.
Thank you. You have in front of you the most recent update we have. It's from the end of December. Obviously, February 1st, the financials are not in yet for January, showing the 205, as we call it, fund. That's for economic development. No measurable activity, really. If you see, we started out just under $1 million, and we're still there around 960. So nothing, no much activity happening. We should have another update here soon. We can pass that along by email once that comes in, probably 5-6 days from now. Any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Russ.
Just kind of a high-level question, Steve. If the Economic Development Board, after the hire of the beginning of Carrie's start with the city, is it possible that the Economic Development Board could take control of this fund? Is that even the realm of possibilities approved by the?
What do you mean by take control?
Well, currently we don't have any funding. We have to go to the council for funding.
Oh.
And is this fund to be controlled by statute, I guess, by the city council or?
Yeah, I mean, there's never been any specific authority to this body to control the fund, although this body has certainly made a lot of expenditures where they've gone to the council and said, hey, look, for Daniel's edition, for any number of things, we'd like to see money transferred to the council. Has usually done that. We have an example of that not happening in a minute with pickleball we'll talk about. But it's just basically one of the funds that the city manages, council oversees with respect to, there's EMS, there's wastewater. It's just another one of those funds.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, are we considered more of an advisory group, or do we have some say in, or do we? Is there a possibility we have more control over the funds for used for economic development?
I'll go look at the way this is created in the bylaws, but effectively it's been an advisory body to the council over the years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a really good question, Russ, because of if we're just advisory, and I do think we need to go back to those bylaws and kind of look at those and maybe continue on with the conversation of amending them. Do I have another question, Ken?
Is the 205 fund being replenished every year through the dividend payment from the utility yet? Is that still going on?
Not directly. I'm trying to think where those monies actually end up, but they're going to the council for allocation, and the council allocated almost all of it to the same purposes that you wanted this year with respect to our partner organizations, facade grants, and all those kind of things. But I think you're right. I'm sorry I'm thinking out loud here. I apologize for that. But ultimately, the money must end up in the 205 fund, must be transferred because that's where it's going to be spent out of. So as you pay money to Main Street for what they do, or you spend money on facade grants, it's got to come out of that fund. So it does end up going into that fund. Maybe not initially, but it's definitely transferred for use by this body for those purposes that were called out.
So just to follow up here. So the utility is still providing the dividend?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the dividend we expect this year is $286,000. And, it's the lion's share that's been allocated for the purposes that this body voted for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just have the bylaws here, and statement and purpose. The Economic Development Board, EDB, was established in accordance with Ordinance 1227 with the City of Marshfield for the purpose of directing, overseeing, and coordinating all economic development activities within the City of Marshfield, to adopt plans and strategies designed to foster business growth and development, and to ensure that the city and its partners work in a cooperative manner to promote coordinated economic development in the community. But under Section 3, General Powers, we have the right to exercise our powers and duties under the authority of the Common Council. So,
I'll tell you what, before the next meeting, I'll get working with the city attorney to kind of clarify this, and then let's work through it. I understand the frustration sometimes here. I mean, this body was set up to be the economic development arm of the city, and it was intended this body would be significant. And yet, from an accounting standpoint, when we spend money, we have to transfer it to the proper account. So we can't spend money directly out of the 205 fund for purposes that aren't called out specifically. So if we decide for pickleball or whatever else we want to give money, that has to be run through a transfer payment to some other account. And budget amendments, as you know, budget resolutions require council approval. I'll get this clarified before the next meeting, because on facade grants, for example, facade grants are not approved by the council. That's because that's a budgeted item. You have $70,000. You're totally empowered to spend it. Some of the other things where you want to transfer money for specific uses that weren't called out in the budget need that blessing. And again, pickleball would have been one of those.
yeah, and under 3.03 duties, prepare an annual budget. So there's some things in here with our duties, and there's nothing under limitations of power. So yeah, some clarity on that. If we're at advisory or it would be great.
And again, have to look back to what the council did last year with that change of having the utility dividend come directly to the general coffers rather than into the 205 fund initially. So I will clear that up for you.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for the fact that you're going to look into that. I agree with Mr. Sauber on this. I presented, as Steve knows, for the pickleball, the $50,000. I was extremely disappointed. The fact that our board overwhelmingly supported to give that $50,000, then the finance committee nixed it. And not that that's the end of the world, or anything, but yeah, if we get that cleared up, there's no need for me to be here if that's the way it's going to be. I mean, because they can decide everything, and the fact is that the council, I'm sure a number of council members didn't even listen to our EDB meetings. That's where we discussed it. So thank you for looking into it.
I think your question that you're all raising, you and Mary Jo and Russ and others, is very foundational, and it needs to be addressed and resolved.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I agree with Tom as well. Like, what's the point of us being here if we have no say in anything? So, all right, we'll get you out. Oh, Paul, go ahead.
Just one thing that I wanted to add is, the dividend, the way it works, did change. The utilities does pay the dividend, but now instead of paying it to the 205 fund, it pays it to the city. However, in the 205 fund, there's $900,000 there that was already paid by the utility over the years. And I guess my question is do we have discretion within spending you may have a budget for $200,000 a year. That leaves you with $760,000 in that fund. So, what do we have control over and what don't we have control over? Because to me, those funds were already for economic development.
I feel like I just went to school and I'm going home with a lot of assignments, and they're good assignments. They're good assignments. They're important assignments that affect how we deal with all these issues. So that's another good sub-question, is based upon how the money and when the money got there.
In other words, have the council ask us for permission to spend economic development money. Right?
Yes, that would be a great suggestion, Rush.
Yeah.
Since you're on the council, you might want to brief. All right. Any other comments or questions on that?
Just one. Steve, I don't see it on the agenda, but could you just update us on the hiring of the assistant administrator?
Yeah, I was going to do that under project updates.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not that that's a project per se, but that's the category I've got my notes ready for.
Item number 8, update on contribution to pickleball project.
Well, as Tom just alluded to, Tom, went to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. Thank you, Tom, for being there to address questions. But they ultimately did vote 3-2 against the resolution. And the way things work here, and again, I think there's been some question about this, maybe needs to be looked into. But as long as I've been here, if something is voted down by a committee, either the Board of Public Works or the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, it doesn't even get to the council. So you have a situation here where it was a 3-2 vote, but theoretically at council level, it might have been a 7-3 vote in favor of the resolution to transfer money for the pickleball court. But anyway, the discussion was held at length, as Tom knows. I think the ultimate feeling among the 3 members who voted against it was that the city is already contributing other monies to the project through borrowing and through room tax revenue. And that was a sufficient contribution from the city to go along with the money being raised privately. So I'm not sure if there's much more I can say.
Go ahead, Tom.
One last comment on that particular item is, I was asked questions, well, how much do you have for fundraising? That wasn't what I was there for. Yeah. I'm not part of that, So they weren't even clear as to, because I said I'm representing the EDB, yet I had all the questions about that. So we'll move on.
Well, no, and I get it. It was and I'm not saying anything against any committee members. It was kind of a frustrating conversation the way it went on. But I do understand they're saying that between room tax and borrowing, they've already committed $150,000, and they felt that was a reasonable contribution from the city, and we can agree or disagree on that. Unless somebody wants to bring it back up at the council level, that's probably set aside.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I would like to also thank Tom for coming before the council. I was there for the finance meeting. I was in the back of the room listening to that. It was good discussion, and decision was made. And then when it came to the council, because it failed at finance committee, the resolution wasn't even included. But it was my intent to pull it out for discussion. So and then meanwhile, the utility grabbed a number of $70,000 and upped it to $75,000 for naming rights for the same project. So I don't think it's all lost. I look at it this way, even though I didn't support it at EDB, I think that, the fundraising has been going well. If there's a gap, for example, maybe we can bring it back for discussion and take another swing at it under the framing of helping them exceed or meet their goal. I really also like the idea that they're going to have a sustainable fund or a fund for maintenance. That's pretty impressive for a group like that. So I think it will be back in some form.
And I appreciate the utilities stepping up to help out. All right, any other comments on the pickleball? Item number 9, update proposed community center project.
Okay, just to get you caught up, the special meeting of the EDB on Saturday that we held here that many of you participated in. Again, thank you for those of you who did. Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon is not a normal event for anybody. We all have family, we have other activities. So thanks for making the time for it. A letter was sent off immediately, signed by Chairperson Wheeler Schuler. And then the council reheard the message on Tuesday night this past week. And they did also vote to send a letter of support for the project as part of the package that's going to Madison. It's a grant application. They could theoretically get in the area of $2 million for this community center that they want to build. It's got hockey and pickleball and all that. So that process moves forward. Just to let you know, there was a TV news story on Channel 7. You were part of it, I was part of it. And trying to clarify to the public, and hopefully they got the message, that the city is certainly excited about this project. The issue at council level is the fact that, in order to make this happen, the covenants would need to be amended. Right now it says there's no recreation uses allowed in the Mill Creek Business Park, and there's no non-profit, non-taxable uses allowed in the park. The other thing is that they want a piece of land to the east of the one that they bought out there, and that would require the city transferring it to them. Neither one of those two things has happened. I'm sure they'll be discussed more. The covenants are going through the process. I'm going to talk about that later today, about the EDB reviewing the covenants as well. And again, the changes to the Mill Creek Business Park covenants are not just about those two items. They're about parking and landscaping and other things that have changed in the past 25 years since the park was built. Standards and guidelines and best practices change as well. So just so you understand it, the city showed support. Glad that they did. Glad that the EDB supported, the idea of having this community center. But ultimately, what it would take to put it in Mill Creek Business Park, if that's going to happen, requires some other approvals that you'll hear being discussed in the next, 60 days or so, maybe longer. Any questions?
Thank you. Just one comment. I'm assuming that name, the community center, is not going to be the final name of it, because we have the Oak Avenue Community Center. You got the community center by the library, and those two alone are, so I hope we can come up with a name, maybe a donor or something. I would not recommend having another community center name, and,
Andrew? Go ahead, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, just kind of to answer Mr. Bucky's concern there. What was represented to us on Tuesday was the fact that this is going to be a private enterprise that was not going to be, needing any tax dollars whatsoever. So I totally agree. The fact that if it stays with community center is probably going to create some confusion. But I think that ultimately, from the point of view from the city, that's something that's unfortunately out of our control. It's going to be up to the private entity to decide how to name it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's not our project, and I got to keep reminding people of that. We may ultimately support it in some way with covenant changes, or potentially, donating land or transferring land under some arrangement. But it's not our project. I do agree, having said that, with you, Tom, that having three properties called the community center might be kind of confusing. So perhaps that's something we can bring to their attention as the process moves forward.
I think they're well aware of that. I think it's evolving. I also would like to remind people that we have no natural resources in this community. So we have no river, we have no lake, we have no mountain, and we need to build our own natural resources. And this would be a way to draw people into this community. I think sometimes we need to get out of our own way with stuff. The covenants and restrictions that are out there have been restrictive. My husband, like I've said in the past, has had to build with Fastenal out there. They're outdated. They need to be looked at. I personally had a project down in Wisconsin Rapids with landscaping that restricted me. I was improving an area of the community in Rapids that was Hank's, that was an old junkyard in Rapids, that was an eyesore. And the city ultimately said, no problem, we'll get rid of the landscaping qualification out there. So sometimes you need to get out of your own way to let economic development happen.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the discussion about this being economic development, because I know that initially the whole intent of the Mill Creek Business Park has been for tax-paying businesses. We spent a lot of money on sewer and water and streets and stormwater improvements with the idea that we'd get businesses to pay taxes and recoup our investment. We are closing District 5 in early 2024, and that means we've been able to pay off all of our debt for those improvements that I just mentioned. But still the question that the council is wrestling with, and rightfully so. I mean, is whether or not this type of use belongs in a business park. But they are supportive of the project, and hopefully we'll come to a conclusion. Hopefully this project will move forward in some way, shape, or form, because I think it would be very good for the community. I totally agree with you.
Any other questions or comments? Item number 10, request for assistance, Woodland Play Cafe project. Katie Stiber. Did I pronounce that right?
Good morning.
Morning.
So thank you all for taking the time to hear more about the Woodland Play Cafe. We were here last month and we shared with you our ideas and our visions for kind of what we're looking to create. So I'm going to just give a little overview, but then we're also going to just talk about how we think it can be beneficial to the community. So the idea is to have an indoor play space for children that's paired with a cafe for parents. So the idea is to marry these two ideas together so well that they can be enjoyed simultaneously. Our vision is for the parents to enjoy some time in the cafe while the children enjoy their time independently in the play area that is designed to encourage just that independent play. So every parent of young children in Marshfield and the surrounding area will agree that this is a long overdue business that is greatly needed for our community in so many ways. So not only is this type of business beneficial for the well-being of families from every walk of life in our community, but it would also be a great driving force for economic development. So many families in our area are leaving Marshfield on a very regular basis to go look for fun things to do with their kids outside of our community because there isn't enough here, especially indoors, so especially in the winter. And we actually did a little poll that's only 9 hours old on our Facebook page. So out of only 38 votes, the highest votes are that people are leaving Marshfield 1 time a month or higher, and 2 to 3 times a month. 37% of people said they're leaving 2 to 3 times a month. So that's obviously money that's not being spent and time that's not being spent in our own community. So they're traveling to Wausau, Plover, Point, Appleton. Appleton or Green Bay isn't really that far for us to go find something to do. So, but far enough to obviously take our money away from here. And then not only will our locals stay local more often, but when people are looking and they're Googling indoor play, central Wisconsin, Marshfield's not even on the map. So if we can add ourselves to that area, we can also finally show up as a result for that and bring people to our area, which obviously is going to help other local businesses as well. So then the next part is obviously birthday parties are another area that's severely lacking in our area, and we intend to fix that in a big way. So we want to offer regular run-of-the-mill birthday parties, but we also want to offer much more. There's nothing in this area that can offer character visits, theme decor, really thinking big party, balloon arches, bounce house rentals, things like that. And then as well as having big community events that would be beneficial for everybody, not just a birthday party, but things like New Year's Eve parties for kids and princess tea parties and things like that. That is really something that you're just not seeing in this community. And again, we're seeing them in Wausau, Appleton, Point, and we're all taking our kids and we're going to those and spending our money there instead of here. So another area that Marshfield residents are very vocal about wanting to see improvements in is restaurants. Now, we're not a typical restaurant. People aren't going to just walk in off the street, but we will be able to offer healthy, fresh meals like paninis, salads, wraps, things like that. And parents will actually be able to sit down and enjoy them. There's not a single place in town besides McDonald's that I can take my kids and not feel guilty about enjoying my meal and letting them be loud or do whatever they need to do. So, and we're all a little tired of McDonald's. So this project would also be a huge support to so many different aspects of the community that have nothing to do with community or with economic development, but would be really great for the community in general. So we have big plans in place to be able to offer low and reduced pricing for low-income families at the battered women's shelters, things like that. So this is also going to have a huge impact on our mental health as parents, which is a huge, just rising issue. So we're all exhausted, we're all touched out, we're all of that stuff. And this will, again, give a place where you can either sit and have an adult conversation, or you can just totally unplug and not have any conversation at all and just let your kids be, and you don't have to feel bad about it. So that's another great opportunity there. And yeah, so a big part of our funding is to have a fund in place that can support being able to give low-income families and more needy families access to everything that we have to offer, which is a reason that we're struggling to keep our costs so low with finding a building and stuff like that. But so basically, we feel like this project is such a great fit for Marshfield because A, it's something that we just don't have and people are really longing for it. Again, just on that survey on our website, that's only 9 hours old. People are all over it. There's 38 responses. And they're leaving Marshfield and we want them to stay here. So, anyways, with all of that said, so we are hoping that you'll consider supporting our efforts. We are asking today for a donation of $50,000. And we could use that in so many ways. We're struggling to find a building that is affordable for what we're trying to do. Again, we want to keep it affordable so that parents can actually come here on a regular basis. So $1 million property is very unrealistic. So whether this would go towards rent or just getting we put together a list of just our bare necessities that we would need to get open. It could go towards a number of things, but it would be so helpful, even in fundraising aspects, that there's a lot of people that are asking, they're interested in supporting us, but who else is on board? If they see that the city is on board, we have so many local businesses that have said, we want to support you, but we don't have this big shiny project of building this big shiny new building like maybe the sports complex. And so we have a little bit more difficulty gaining traction in the fundraising aspect. So if the city was on board, I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One comment I have is, how do we give assistance without knowing our role? Mm-hmm. And we just tried to do pickleball. So I think it's hard for us as a body to even address this at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking that as Katie was talking. So I think I talked to Katie about the fact that generally when we have a person make a presentation like this, the board doesn't react at this first meeting. They take it under advisement. Hopefully you'll have some questions for her here in a minute. And then you would look at the next meeting. And that'll fit really well with what you're saying, that before next meeting, we'll get a little more clarification as to this body's exact role without council approval. And those two will meld together, not just for this issue, but for future issues. But for right now, I think it'd just be good to dialogue with Katie on any questions you have, knowing that this will be something you'll see as an action item on the next meeting.
Russ.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. For the record, could you give your name and your role in the organization?
Sorry.
Usually people do that when they start.
Sorry. Katie Stieber. And so I am the president. So we started a nonprofit. And so myself and Courtney and my husband are on the board of that. So that it's just the three of us, and we're
okay. And I certainly can feel your passion for it.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Do you have a business plan yet? I'm trying to get my head around. Is it a not-for-profit, a daycare,
not a daycare,
restaurant, cafe?
Yep. So not a daycare. So we do have a business plan. But essentially the concept is, so we want to have this huge open concept. So parents can sit, eat, enjoy a meal, and they don't have to eat, but all kinds of seating, then more comfortable seating within the play area. It's really a place where kids can play and parents don't have to follow them around the whole time. So whether you want to think of it like a McDonald's on steroids, but things like that where the parents can sit and enjoy and the kids can play in the same space.
Okay. And when you come back to this group, would you be willing to share the business plan so we can kind of understand where our support might be helpful?
Sure. Yeah, it's, the hardest part for us right now is it's so variable, being that we just haven't landed on a building. We could be able to house 50 kids a day. We could be able to house 20 kids a day or 70 kids a day. So it's really difficult. So everything on there, of course, is variable, but we have what we would hope for our bare minimum to be. So.
Yeah, the other thing, I sit on the council, and I know there was some discussion about the building that we were gifted, Buffalo Building. Mm-hmm. And I didn't support that acceptance of the free building because there are always strings attached with maintenance and such. But what comes to mind for me is possible land contract. If we were to sell that building, and if your organization is a fledgling organization, just starting out, maybe could be something for the city to consider. One thing I would like to avoid is 4 years down the line, we give you the slip and say, hey, we found someone to buy the building and the organization's got to relocate. That would not be good for you. And we wouldn't like to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. When you come back, generally when we give funds out, it's more specific.
Sure.
It's not, we can't have an open-ended thing. You're going to have to come and say what you would really like the money for. And I see Steve heading up there, so.
One thing I think with any project, you need a really strong business plan, what you're going to do, and a vision, because it's hard for people to buy into something without seeing that full concept. So that's just a suggestion, is come with a really solid business plan, even if it's pie in the sky. But just have, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. This is where we want to be. I know over in Point, I think they did just a building for all nonprofits.
Sure.
They just opened that up over there, but it houses all of their nonprofits in the city. So that's something maybe we could look at as a community that would make more sense for something. Another community center. Thanks, Russ. Any other questions for her? Go ahead, Sam.
Just kind of playing off Russ's comment and Tom's as well. You're right on point. I mean, the desire of this meeting is to see the level of interest in what Katie is planning on doing. Obviously, if you ultimately decide at some point to provide funding toward it, what are you providing funding toward? How does that fit into a bigger package? What will that do? An understanding of what you'd be investing in, so to speak. Totally great questions, and those would all have to be baked at that point. I just wanted to get you guys familiar with this, and she did a good job of presenting back in January, but now actually making a specific ask, so you start thinking about whether or not support would be warranted.
Nice presentation, Katie, and thank you for coming. Yes. All right. Item number 11, explore possible community development projects. Rick? Hopefully the computer works for you today.
Is there a way to project the presentation or?
Hold on 1 second. Are we good if we skip to a different item while she emails IT to get that project? Are you guys okay with that? If we move to another item and then come back?
Or you do have the presentation I can talk?
We have Andrew. That's the only issue. So, okay, so we'll come back to that. We're just going to go to item 12, response regarding possible sledding hill on UWSP Marshfield campus.
Yeah, I think we may have included that presentation in the agenda packet. So maybe perhaps Andrew can see it, maybe he can't, I don't know. I apologize for that hiccup here at this point in the meeting. I see him nodding.
Okay.
So anyway, at the last meeting at the end, somebody brought up, might have been you, Tom, brought up the idea of possibly a sledding hill. And this has been talked about before. I think even Marshfield Utilities has had this conversation. They might be supportive of trying to get something like that going for our youth. Of course, we need snow first, which is apparently not happening right now. But I did have a little dialogue with Anthony Andrews. He is the head over there at UWSP Marshfield campus. He had not heard about this, but he indicated to me that he likes the idea. He said his only concerns would be the expected ones of liability and any concerns with minors, and risk. But beyond that, he'd be open to the conversation to see if something like that could be put together. So his response was high level, just saying basically I'm not ruling it out, but I'd have questions about insurance and liability and those kind of things. So it may be something we want to have people explore on the side during the off season here and see if there might be some way to work something like that.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the utilities did take a look at doing it up by the water treatment plant where people already slide, but not in an organized fashion. And we ran into the same concerns, looking at liability as being one of them. Also looking at the ongoing maintenance, because the more you do, the more you have to keep up. And so that's kind of where we stopped at it. But I think it's worth pursuing. It's just we weren't going to take it on at that time.
Okay. It'll definitely, if it happens, have to be kind of a team effort involving a lot of people to make it happen. But it's a really good idea. And it's good to know that the college might be interested in helping out if a plan could be brought together that they could live with.
It sounds like two of you would like to pursue this. Would you like to pursue that? Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, but not for the last comment. The Park and Recreation has recreational immunity, like the skate park and other items. So that's a big item. I don't know if they could get that or how that would work, but that's got to be pursued to look into that stuff. But I didn't know about that at the utility. I mean, that would be actually better because it's a hill already.
Yeah, right.
So it's worth all of this looking into. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Tom. And the county and the city own that facility jointly, so we're kind of co-owners already of the property. we're not trying to take a private property and try and put some liability protection on it that we can't. So that's a good point.
Any other questions? Going back to item 11, since Andrew has the packet, we don't need to email that out. So thank you, Steve. Go ahead, Rick.
So Rick Kinchy with Community Impact, and I think that proposal probably was presented maybe back in October, September, something like that. So I just want to make myself available and things just for additional questions. Again, I'm not a consultant. And so it's not like the fact that this is a prepackaged. This is just being a practitioner and coming alongside of Wood County Health and Human Services and relationships navigated through economics of what we're doing in Milwaukee and brought me here and things like that. So I just want to, again, put that into that context just because for me, I've been in my own community with a comprehensive plan, and I've just seen how consultants will come in, they'll go ahead and give a template, insert your name, hopefully they catch all their little changes, input half of it with a bunch of ESRI demographics and call it good and collect a paycheck. For me, it's much more being an agile and pinpointed plan. So that we're really focusing on a key neighborhood or something like that in order to significantly reduce the costs that city expends in a particular neighborhood. And that's why the pinpointed rather than a comprehensive. And also agile. So if we're not seeing real outcomes and things like that, that we can shift to another area in the city. But the whole idea is to reduce costs in the city. That final page, a lot of those key elements were elements from the job description that has now since been filled. And so again, it wasn't necessarily to do the functions as much as to come alongside of the existing organization. So if I were to see myself, I would see myself now as a consultant as more of a seamstress. Meaning I see this as much more of a quilt. You already have pre-existing organizations and entities. You have the city, you have UW Extension, you have the county, you have Chamber of Commerce, you have the Visitors Bureau, you have your public schools. But there's still an element where each of those entities is focusing on their own entity. And there is some collaboration at certain points. But who's the seamstress that's stitching all of those together so that it's not just a randomness of housing, but how do we really stitch that so that we actually see that through? Does that make sense? And so that's a niche or a place that I'm willing to be in. My passion is governance. And so even the whole conversations related to this body and the community, there is something nice about being neutral and an outsider in order to just allow all voices in a way that Steve could be a full participant rather than having to, when do I have a voice and when do I need to hold the line? Does that make sense? And so it just puts, just seeing it where, just things like that. But to me, the core change in everything is, I know we all know about TIFs and things, but the realities is to really utilize the ArcGIS subscriptions that the county and the city and many of our entities have access to, but maybe not to the degree that we could really collectively dive into the GIS, which is just really a fancy way of visualizing data in a way that can help everyone make more pinpointed decisions. So I think while we all know TIF, the other acronyms are really the GIS. I think an economic development board. You can look at, I work with Chippewa Falls, and so Chippewa County. If you just look up Chippewa County economic development, we were also up in Delta County, so Escanaba. You could look that up. So there's just an element that an economic development corporation also has some key functions that can come alongside and bless the city, but still have autonomy, but still being stitched together for a common goal. So you have a TIF, which GIS, economic development, so EDCs. But then if you're really pinpointing rather than being comprehensive, you also have the capacity for bids, business improvement districts, where the businesses can actually pool their resources together for a common goal, okay? So it's not someone from the outside telling them what they can do, but it's within, and then being able to leverage things that are already available to every single community. But then everybody's always going to say, well, yeah, but you can't get a volunteer in this community. You can't really activate and rally the citizenry and things. But the reality is there are such things as a NID, an NID, a neighborhood improvement district, where as a collective neighborhood, they can come alongside and maybe they're the ones that take on a sledding hill or something like that. So there's just these extra acronyms that I believe that are utilized together can actually create the, I think it's called in that second slide, a continuum of economic care. Does that make sense? Because there are key places where, the Chamber of Commerce really has a significant role, like with SCORE or things like that, to come alongside of businesses with their business plan, right? And so everyone has a place to play, but if we don't know kind of when we activate or when we pass the baton on to another, it's not the fact that there's a miscommunication, there just isn't an awareness, as exemplified already this morning, of authority and things like that. And so I just think in the completeness of it all is that the reality of much of this is just the fact that as authority is granted, accountability is received. Does that make sense? And so you can have this harmonious. So people say, well, you're an optimist. And I say, no, I'm not. I just believe that every day is a blue, sunny sky day. And they're like, oh, but that's an optimist. And I'm like, no, I'm a realist because I know this. The higher the altitude, it's always going to be a bright, sunny day. Anyways, I just want to make myself available. But again, I'm just being ushered rather than initiating. And this is where I find myself. So I just want to make myself available for any questions.
So I had reached out to Rick a while ago. I see a need for someone like him. But I think the big piece of this was the city hiring someone. And until we got to that point, I would like to have him have a conversation with that person. I see a lot of different entities in this city and they don't communicate. And his point of like stitching all those entities together, we have a great community. We just seem to all paddle our boat in a different direction some days and sometimes hit each other over the head with paddles. I think what he brings isn't, and I've seen the city also spend money on consultants that come in and $60,000 for sign consulting or whatever it is, and then poof, they're gone. And our money's gone, our taxpayer dollars are gone. Where if this is something that we can actually develop our city and grow our city, I think it would be money well spent. But now I go back to the point of we have no authority. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for what it is. And Andrew, you had a question. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairperson, or Mayorwoman. Mary Jo, however you want to get called. And forgive me for just being dense here, but let me just restate this, and please correct me when I get this wrong, because I probably will get this wrong. But Rick, you see your role as more of a conductor of having the already pre-existing entities playing with each other, making sure they communicate. Is that correct? Or am I totally missing the boat here?
Yeah, so really it's just really attentively listening to each and then bringing, like a consultant would always do, is bring everybody together in order to have that cohesive. It's just the fact that I have no intentions of leaving with that consultant. Does that make sense? But to be able to convene, because we have to hear the unique priorities and the giftings of each entity so that we can really, like a better word, exploit all of that and drain them of what they are passionate for so that we can better coordinate. Is that an answer? Is that helpful?
Great. Yes. No, like I said, I just want to make sure I'm thinking about it correctly because, I can really do stupid stuff with my head here. So the other thing then too is that, and I saw in the presentation here, if you saw me turning away, I was not turning away from you guys. I was looking at a different screen. With the, where was it? It's a term of art, which is why I'm struggling to get to here. The comprehensive plan. How would that interplay with the city's comprehensive plan that's already established? Would that enhance it? Would that go side by side? Would that replace it? What are you thinking here? And granted, I get it's very early on, so it's very open-ended. I'm not gonna hold your feet to the fire or anything of the sort.
Yeah, I don't know if any city needs another comprehensive plan. So it was really utilizing what is already existing, but now just taking it and let's find something in order to, for my pinpoint and drill down. and really bring something up and out so that we're not just getting into that 10-year comprehensive plan where we're kind of like the consultant again of kind of repeating a couple of things and just kind of kicking that comprehensive plan down. But let's really go down deep and extract.
So would it be a fair description if I were to say that you were to tweak or polish or refine the existing comprehensive plan?
Yes. So like today, Steve's going to go back to a whole bunch of assignments, right, from today's meeting on top of all the other responsibilities and just certain things just from, the realities of, only working 90 hours a week and things that you can't get everything done. And so having an outsider just to kind of my role is just to be able to go out and about, then I can come back and hopefully save Steve and to each of the entities time by figuring out where the gaps are.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate the answers.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think the main point here for me is that Rick obviously has a lot of background and skills, and he's a great resource. So as we're talking from month to month, as we bring Carrie on, our new Assistant City Administrator, Community Development Director, when we have a project, when we have a need, somebody who can help us connect the dots or maybe study something for us that we need to try and get a better handle on, that this would be somebody that we would be able to engage with and call upon. And I want you to keep that in mind. I mean, I think he's been here faithfully, talking to us, communicating with us with the idea that, hey, I'm here. If you have something for me to do, let me know, because I've been able to do it in other places. And so as you have ideas of thoughts you'd like to have something looked at more deeply or studied or pulled together, bring it up. I think that'll be especially more important now as we finally have planning and economic development staff for the first time in a very long time to engage with.
No, he has been here faithfully. And I just think I see these different entities. Everybody has good intentions, but sometimes, and Mayor, we've had this conversation too, sometimes of like, well, your group needs to stay in their lane. Well, sometimes we need to be in each other's lanes. And it's not that we're trying to do harm to each other. It's that we need to have that communication. And sometimes people get really defensive about their little area, their little fiefdom. And there's no reason for that. So I just thought somebody that's neutral, that doesn't have any skin in the game, that's not somebody from here, but he's done success in other communities, would be beneficial to everyone involved. So.
And that's a really good point. I think, we talk about how wonderful our economic development partners are, and we are blessed to visit Marshfield, Main Street, Marshfield, and Mackey, walking beside us. The CDA helps us from time to time, whatever. But maybe trying to help pull people together onto one sheet of music might be one of the goals that Rick could help us with at some point.
Any questions for Rick? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Plain and simple, I agree. I think everything that Steve has said and you've said and Mary Jo have stated, that we need that to come together. And we need somebody, because everybody's got projects that are maybe important to them. And this is somebody that can get together with everybody and communicate. Probably is the biggest term, so thank you.
And I think at the end of the day, I look at the cost of things and what's our return on investment. I thought he was reasonable too. So I didn't think, we're spending. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Real quick, I'm a paint by numbers kind of person. So, and we heard a great presentation from Katie earlier today. Could you kind of illustrate how this could impact business users who really don't know where the first place to start is to get things going? And then once they get things going, they don't know where step 2 is.
Yeah.
And I see that as a problem in our community over and over again with different business people that I'm speaking to.
Yeah. If you look at that one slide that has the different hearts and the different seasons, I sometimes talk about like being a NASCAR, but I see seasons as, they're obviously going to be cyclical. And so in the winter months is a good time to review that governance, right? Like what was even talked about this morning, right? Just to kind of everybody clarifying that. But then from there, I think it was going to the business community, I think, was spring. And then, so it's really going to the individual businesses and collecting, feedback loops and things like that. So that then we're bringing it back. I think the next one was government, right? And so then city council and others would be able to have that informed mosaic from the business community. And then the next season was education, or was that community?
Community.
So, but getting out there into the civics of the individual people who are the employees, and the homeowners and different things like that. So, but the whole idea is paint by numbers is going through the seasons and really focusing on one of those entities in order to bring back the feedback for the fullness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so we're always attentively listening. So, when I come and go, you already have a new a paint by, how you have the coloring completed in that, but now you can go and color more. You have the book now, but it's not as daunting anymore because now you actually have the crayons, or you have the markers, or you have the paint. Does that make sense? But right now, you barely even have a coloring book, right? But you all want to paint by numbers. But I think the cyclical seasons approach, so that everybody gets a priority, but it's all part of a cohesive ecosystem.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rick. Item number 13, project updates, if any.
Yep, thank you. As was mentioned earlier, that Russ brought up, we do have a new Assistant City Administrator, Community Development Director hired. And again, I want you to realize that the lion's share of this position, at least initially, and probably for the long haul, will be on the community development side. And we need a director for that department, somebody to help oversee, head up our economic development and planning functions. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been out without anybody for a long time. When you think about Josh Miller, Bryce Hembrook, and Emmett Simkowski leaving all in the same year back in 2022. So her first day is February 26th. The next time you guys gather, she will be here with us. Her background is that she is right now has been a planner and community development specialist for the city of Wisconsin Rapids, but she has an extensive background in those areas of planning and community development. And we're excited to have her coming on board with us now in less than a month. The updates on the TIF districts, those projects in TIF District 13, 14, and 15 are still slowly moving along. We've had good conversations with all three of them recently. In fact, we have meetings coming up with a couple of them very, very soon. We met with Weinbrenner a week or so ago. We're trading information back and forth with them. I'll probably be meeting again with them within the next couple of weeks, trying to help find if we can accommodate what they're looking for to move into the business park where we'd like to have them in Mill Creek. TIF District 14, the one up by Fleet Farm and Merriwood, that area. Still talking with Jeff Hill. Have a meeting set up with him for this coming Monday to talk about his plan to hopefully do 2 and 3 unit buildings up in that area. And TID 13 over by 21st and Washington. Again, ongoing conversation with them about the Denyon Homes project over there. Again, 1, 2, and 4 unit buildings. Been working with our financial advisor, Ellers, on how to try and make all this work. One of the problems we're having, just so you know, is infrastructure cost. The cost of street, sewer, and water improvements has gone up a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. Construction costs in general have gone up. So all these projects, when the role involves putting in infrastructure, it's a challenge to try and figure out how to make that work financially. And in the TID 13 one with Denyon, our contribution to that project will be the infrastructure if this happens. So trying to get a handle on what that might cost and making sure that we recoup our investment from that project. But all 3 of those conversations continue on, and hopefully we'll get to a positive conclusion. You're going to see next week the proposed Mill Creek Business Park covenants we've talked about. Here's the plan right now. It's been reviewed and re-reviewed by staff and the city attorney. The covenants committee has looked at it the first time. But in the month of February, we are going to the businesses out there, Prevention Genetics, Hewitt Meats, Dental Crafters, and all those, meeting with them, going through them, making sure they understand them, getting any concerns that they have with the proposed changes to those covenants. And then we'll also be going back to the covenants committee for one more look. Then in March, it will come to this body for a full review. I'll get it to you a couple weeks in advance for you to start marking up. Plan Commission in March as well, and then finally to the council on March 26th. That is a planned timeline right now for reviewing this. And again, we talk a lot about the sports complex project, the recreational uses and the nonprofit uses, but again, realize that there's a lot of little tweaks being proposed to some of the existing requirements, either to make them more what they should be in 2024, modify them to be appropriate for the standards of the day, whatever. And I'm sure we'll have a good debate about some of those when they come back. Still working on getting the first housing team meeting. I need to talk to you briefly if I can after the meeting, Mary Jo, but it looks like we're going to have that in the next 10 days. Finally have that team together to talk about the long-term housing needs of the city. Undoubtedly going to get some professionals to work with us to help us along the way on what the true needs might be. Along with that, thank you, Kayla, for being here. I hope as many of you can sign up as possible to go to Rapids on March 6th for that summit. It looks really well laid out, really planned, good speakers, good discussion. And we're working out we'll handle the registration costs here for you guys. We're working out carpooling if we can for as many people as might be able to make it. So I can send out the flyer again to you, but please let me know if you want to be involved in that trip on March 7th. It's a Thursday. We'll talk about rescheduling our meeting in a minute. Karen, maybe if you're going to give a brief report, you can touch on the certified sites when you're up here. Exciting news. We're ready to kind of have a little bit of a splash for it and move on our way. Had a kickoff meeting on the West 2nd Street redevelopment project earlier this week with Vanderwall, and we'll be getting involvement from the EDB along with CDA and council on where this goes, but just trying to start putting framework together for what to do, again, with that area west of Chestnut along 2nd Street, headed out toward Stephen J. Miller Park, and kind of putting the pieces in place as to how we can move forward and try and get some redevelopment out there. I'll mention this now, item for future agenda. I've been talked to by Marsha Bushman. She's trying to get together another type of business here in Marshfield. It would be a co-working space and entrepreneurial space. Normally you only hear about bigger cities having this, but she thinks it might be workable here. A place where people can come if they work remotely, but they don't want to sit in their house all the time. They want to be near other people who they can talk to and interact with. Entrepreneurs trying to start that first business, and they just need a small office to work from. And be a building that would try to accommodate these uses, and you'll hear more from her at our March meeting. We continue discussing the Buffalo building that was mentioned earlier. Obviously, Katie and Courtney are interested in that building for a short-term lease for their project with the Woodland Play Cafe. We're still talking about the broader issue, and my goal is to get, and I said this probably at the last meeting, to get the council and everybody on board to, are we going to use this someday for a police station or not? If we are, what's it going to take to make that happen? If not, let's look at other opportunities that may be available to us down the road. And the facade grant, Katie may touch on this in a minute. We're starting up for the new program year of facade and interior conversion grants. And we'll be talking more about that with you in March as we kick that off and get some promotional information out there to people who might have projects that they would like to present. That's a lot of information, but I would take questions on these or any other things that you might be thinking about.
Any questions? Go ahead, Brett.
Thank you, Steve. Regarding the new hire, Carrie,
yeah.
I understand she'll be reporting to you.
Yep.
Okay, and I think she'll be a great fit for the culture within the city. I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to kind of put a challenge out there, and I think it might help her with the onboarding. We have a comprehensive plan. We have a strategic plan. We have Main Street. We have Mackey. I'm not sure about SCORE, if that's still an organization that, okay, it is. But all these various entities, and Visit Marshfield, of course, sorry, Matt, all these various entities, in addition to Economic Development Board, I sense a need to understand what we have in place, existing things. For example, the business parks. I mentioned at one of our council meetings. There is even a lack of understanding and appreciation at the council level, I think, on what these parks were created for, what their missions were. And my challenge to Carrie, and I'm not sure, I don't want to put a deadline on it, but maybe 60 days in, that if she could give us her impression of how we're structured, what strengths, weaknesses we have in place, that kind of thing. But I think that'd be very helpful for all organizations, including the council.
Yeah, I applaud your thoughts on orientation. Orientation is going to be critical. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's days I go back to my office after this meeting, and I've already got a list that I like to walk up to her on her first day and say, "Here you go."
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Oh, by the way, that's your office right over there. I'm not going to do that. We want to give a good orientation to all the people involved, many of whom are in this room and others, and the structure, and understanding the structure and understanding what we have in place today before we start asking her for feedback and assessment. I like the idea of her giving us an assessment after a certain period of time of where maybe we could do things differently or maybe better, but I want to make sure she can get grounded. I want those seeds to be planted and watered before we start throwing stuff at her. And I have to look in the mirror every day because there's a laundry list that I've got on my desk every day that make me want to have her here. But I applaud what you're saying and I agree with it.
And one other thing on the topic of onboarding, you reminded me of that. Alderperson Natasha Tompkins has initiated an effort to provide information to potential candidates for elected office committee boards and commissions to help understand what the roles are, what the time commitments are, and maybe a glimpse at the bylaws so we know what our individual missions are as organizations. So that is just starting. I applaud Natasha for taking that initiative, and it hopefully will be posted on the website, the city website, so that people can understand, or they can take a look in advance and find out what they may or may not be getting into. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we do have people who periodically get on council and aren't really fully sure what they signed up for. They got on because of certain issues that are important to them. Totally agree.
Questions? Comment? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 14, economic development activities updates.
Good morning, everybody. Getting a suntan sitting over there, but I love it. Anyway, if I could respond to Russ's comments, I'd like to briefly just say this. This EDB board did a strategic plan. If you guys haven't reviewed it, I encourage you to review it because there was a lot of specific things that were called out in that plan, and it also specifically holds people accountable for what roles they play in that. Every day when I look at, does this make sense for me to be doing it? Should I be involved in this? I look back to that plan, and when I report out and ask for additional funding, that's what I look to, because why else do we have a plan? We're not going to look back and say, yes, this makes sense. We want to do attraction, retention. We want to grow our business parks. We want to grow our community. So maybe it would be good. One of the first steps would be, as you stated, Russ, let's do, look at this plan again and update it and see who the responsible parties are. Because that's really, again, why we spent all that time and effort and involvement of all the partners and players into doing that. So just wanted to state that. And also, I guess I wanted to bring forward, attraction is important. It's important to this community. But what do people remember? They remember the bright new shiny Hobby Lobby. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's great. You want to see these retail companies coming in. That's what everybody talks about. That's what the news picks up. But what about retaining? What about growing our businesses? You rarely see that in the news unless it's a great big new building or something. So I guess where I'm going to tie that in, the retaining and growing is much more important, but it's kind of that little hidden piece of economic development. And I'm sure Kaylee will talk about this a little bit as well, but last night, I want to applaud Mackie because they really did, they had their annual meeting last night. And 3 things that we celebrated was Entrepreneur of the Year. And that was Discovery Education Center that's in the downtown, Linda Rayborn Rodriguez. She started this business 5 years ago on just a shoestring. It fits a niche in the community where she's teaching and training young people to do good things. And she just keeps fighting her way and clawing, and she's already relocated once to a larger facility. Our Small Business of the Year was Arts Auto Body. He's done expansion there. They do really good things in the community, a much needed business. And then our Firm of the Year is Hotel Marshfield. And they've been in existence for 10 years. And they're, again, a very integral part of this community. And so it's good to celebrate these people. And again, I'm sure Kaylee's going to talk about hers when you hear about all these small businesses downtown that have expanded, that have grown. And I'll also touch on, from my calculations, though they may not be totally accurate, we had 33 new businesses this year in Marshfield. And that's a little higher than usual because we track this every year. We also had a few more closings. We had about 10 closed for various reasons that we probably won't go into today. But do we look at that? You bet we do. We try to follow up with them and say, okay, why are you closing? What's going on? What can we do different to help? We also had 16 businesses move or expand and 6 ownership changes. And then we celebrated 80 businesses that were having milestone anniversaries. And I think last year in October, we probably celebrated about 60 of those. So we sometimes tend to lose sight of these people that struggle every day, make adaptations, changes, and hopefully we all help them a little bit in some way. That's our role, and that's what I think we're here to do. So I want to give lastly an update. I hope my 5 minutes isn't up. But on the certified sites, you guys have heard a lot about that, but it is finally moving to another level. Very excited about it. We just got this. I haven't even shared it with Steve yet. but we got a 7-page report out that's going to be shared. The state is equally proud of Marshfield and equally proud of these certified sites. They're going to help promote that. We can promote it on our websites. But Steve and I just got together with staff and we're talking about doing a really big splash either in March or April. We're going to get Secretary Missy Hughes from the Economic Development Corp here, possibly the governor. Don't get your hopes up. But we're also going to look at, we want all of the council involved. We want Synergy involved. We want Mackey involved. All of our players, Main Street. This is important to everybody. And we're going to do a groundbreaking. And then we'll do some other fun things just to really get Marshfield on the map. This will be marketed prior to that, but we're really going to have this big news press release. And I think it's really going to be great for the community. So watch for more to come on that. And lastly, I will share with you our Dairy Fest theme for this year. Everything's butter in Marshfield. So I think there's a lot of ways we can play on that one. Thank you. Yep, open to any question.
Just one, I think for clarity, the 5-minute rule applies to public comment. So Karen, you can talk.
Thank you.
You can talk as long as you want. I enjoyed the updates, and I'm thinking they might even be better early in our agenda.
Oh.
So, hearing from individual organizations that we're here to support would be.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Haley?
It was a lovely night last night, and just so grateful for those businesses that you had mentioned. We also celebrated our annual meeting last week. We call it the Downtown Awards, and it's where we celebrate business milestones, new businesses, and in addition to that, renovation projects, people who have been volunteering throughout the organization, noteworthy giving, that sort of a thing. And it was a great turnout and a great location at the Chestnut Center. We talked a little bit about our accreditation, giving us about $21,000 in value through the WEDC. So we have to work hard to earn that accreditation status for Wisconsin Main Street every single year. And that was just 2023 alone in value. We also celebrated over 1,500 volunteer hours, which is valued at over $47,000 for our organization and the amount of giving time that it takes to run Main Street. And we also celebrated 121 sponsors, which actually gave a mix of cash and in-kind, mostly toward events, $85,000. And most of that gets poured right into those events. It's making an impact downtown. So we don't usually see that money sit in our bank account. It goes right back into the district. And nearly half of the new businesses that Karen had mentioned in town, nearly half are downtown and located in little offices or places that you might not overtly see hidden in some of these larger buildings. So we're celebrating that as well. If you'd like to revisit that presentation and see the full presentation, both the WEDC and Synergy presented at the beginning and gave some really valuable information, content that's noteworthy for the entire city, not just downtown. Marshfield Broadcasting will have that on their website this week. Right now we're getting ready for Cabin Fever, which is an odd year for a winter festival for us for sure. Snowfest was canceled, unfortunately, but we do have the run on February 17th. Charcoal drawing is 2 nights. And we have luminary hikes that were rescheduled because of this muddy weather to later in February. Our housing and entrepreneurial ecosystem meetings continue. Part of that was the housing summit that Kayla had mentioned, and we're really grateful to be a part of those groups. I think we're on the cusp, not just with Carrie joining us, but with a lot of collaboration through the county, and Kayla's been a huge part of that for some really good collaboration, no matter what. I mean, I think we are really on the cusp with some good projects for our community. So Main Street is excited about that. Any questions for me?
Go ahead, Russ.
Thank you for the invitation to the annual meeting, the awards banquet. I thought it was very well executed, very nice venue. It was mentioned earlier, business improvement district, and maybe that's one of the little nuggets I can take off of Carrie's plate, but could you talk a little bit about the bid and what that is and how it functions so we understand it?
Sure. So the bid was established around the same time Main Street was established, and very thankfully the bid has worked hand in hand with Main Street to execute really our mission to energize and strengthen downtown Marshfield. The bid district houses about 200 businesses on any given year, and that does not count the actual property owners, but the businesses that are in it. And it runs from about St. Vincent de Paul's all the way down to Holiday Inn with some side streets included here and there. The cutoff is before the post office kind of Weinbrenner area. So Second Street Corridor is not included in that, although we do really want to work hand in hand with those businesses to make sure that we have a cohesive downtown and we're still serving all property owners involved. So the property owners, they pay a bid tax into this pool of money on an annual basis. They decide where that money goes and what the program or object that they would like to use to impact the district on an annual basis. Historically, Main Street has received that money as a base for our programming, and the bid board on a quarterly basis reviews our financials, and here's an annual report on all of the programs and business visits that we do to keep tabs on what's happening in the district so we can continue to serve them well.
Or a follow-up question, could you give us an example of a effort that was financed by the bid, and how healthy is the bid fund, if you could disclose that? Fairly
That's
viable.
a tricky question. Well, the bid, okay, maybe Steve will save me here. The bid fund has not changed significantly, and that's unique to Marshfield, I would say. So most bids you would see the increment would stay the same amount, and that would continue to create a larger pool of money based on property assessments. That is not how Marshfield has run things. We've actually changed the assessment so that no matter how high that property value goes up, that property owner would be paying the same amount every single year. So that sum at the end of the year would be the same amount every year.
Yeah, there is no real running balance in the bid fund. It's money in, money out every year annually. And for the whole time I've been here until just now, we've collected $66,000 and then paid out $66,000 to Main Street for all the great work that they do. Now they've approved a 3.2% increase for this coming year, 2024. And I think the plan is to have small increases for the future. But whatever comes in is spent in that given year. It's not like there's some running building up of a fund balance in bid.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kelly. Matt?
Hi guys, Matt McLean, Visit Marshfield. Thanks for having me. Wow, as Kaylee had mentioned, I think the no snow is, hampering a few activities and events. Thankfully, we can still can run with no snow, right? And I was thinking of maybe asking Nikki and Lois, do you want to go over and open the fountain? I mean, the ice skating's not working, right? Well, I think as the sort of spring is in the air, we've been getting a lot of calls for Maple Fall Fest already. So we actually did launch our craft vendor applications yesterday online. So it's featured on our homepage. And if you make any crafts or you have any friends or vendors, tell them to go to visitmarshfield.com and they can already sign up to be a vendor at Maple Fall Fest. I think we've already got a couple dozen people signed up. So that's exciting. We are kind of starting our initial plannings phases for Maple Fall Fest, looking at pushing out our sponsorships, as well as talking to our food vendors. So that's kind of on the plate. Again, working on some of our spring and summer campaigns through social media and different advertising outlets, as well as our website. We are involved with the Jurassic Park project, so we're making some good headway there, and I think as we get a few pieces together and stuff, we'll be showing that around the community. I've been working with Dale and Justin on the Fair Expo building project. So I think there's some good things happening that way. I think starting to figure out where the building may go and maybe some design ideas. And then also I think we're going to try to look into the feasibility of like what could happen there and how that could work. Let's see here. We're also working on our travelwisconsin.com and centralwisconsin.com, kind of making sure that we're having events and activities that are shown through those channels. Let's see, what else do I got here? Oh, I'm looking forward to working with Carrie when she starts on. I was thankful to be part of the interviewing process and whatnot. I got to take her on a city tour for about an hour and then spend another hour with her over lunch and stuff. So I think that started a good rapport there, and I think she's going to be a good fit. Let's see. Do have some good news. Visit Marshfield partners with Rotary Winter Wonderland, and we did get some data there. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but the cash was up about 30% from the previous year, or excuse me, from the budget. And then there was 46,000 food items collected, and one big win that we had, I think, in the PR and the earned media, where we really didn't have to spend the money for it, was the Channel 7 came 5 different different times. I think that's the most they've ever come, and did a lot of live footage there. We also had WIFC Radio and Dave Calloway do some live broadcasts there. So Winter Wonderland was a big success this year. I guess I'll open myself up for questions this time.
Any questions?
Thank you, Matt. Just a refresher on the Jurassic Park project.
Sure.
What is that?
Yeah, we have a committee, the Friends of Jurassic Park, has been working with Clyde Winia and Nancy Winia, that when Clyde kind of says, hey, I want to take the tour guide hat off and die down, that we want to move the Jurassic Park attraction to Marshfield. And we have identified an area in Wildwood Park and have some plans.
Okay, thank you. And I would echo the enthusiasm for the new expo building project. I know Tom is working on that as well, and it's a very clever design, and I think we'll have a lot of support. So thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Russ.
Any other questions for Matt? Okay. There is another meeting after us at 9, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
Sure.
I'm just moving things along just to be out of respect for the next meeting. Item number 15, suggested items for upcoming agenda. Are there any suggested items, Tom?
I don't have any suggested items, but I think Mr. Bargander started this last meeting we had. You know, I'm very thankful for our partners out there, and I think I can speak for the board on this. You guys are doing a great job, and people need to really know what's all going on there, and this is a good thing to come together to get the word out there, but we couldn't do it without you. So thank you, all of our partners and Wood County. So, and we haven't, Jason's been here, but we've never had the Wood County people here like this. And I think it's good. We're all coming together to do good things. So thank you.
Thanks. All right. Ken.
Thanks. For future agenda item, I think for next week, next month, I should say, I think we should review a policy for public comments. Today we had some input from the gallery on the public inputs, public comments, I should say. We've had, in the past, we've had people here speak for like 20 minutes. Sometimes we're asking questions during public comments. And so I think we should review the policy of public comments and see the do's and don'ts and see what's on the books and see if you want to have any tweaks specific to this board. So thank you.
Good point. And yeah, I would just like to add the things we already mentioned that I asked that you put on the next agenda, and I'll work with the chair on this, but certainly we'll be introducing Carrie, and we'll be following up on the proposal that Katie and Courtney brought to us today, more conversation about the Woodland Play Cafe. In addition to that, the Mill Creek Business Covenants are going to be front and center for you to go through those and mark them up and have any questions you want about the proposed changes that are being made. We have more than 100 acres left in the business park, I believe, and this is important stuff, so get ready to come up with your thoughts on that one as we go along. And then finally, I think that I mentioned there's going to be a co-working entrepreneurial space discussed as well as a possible project. I like what's being talked about here for strategic planning too. Maybe you guys don't even have the plan that Karen's referring to from back in the middle of the last decade, redevelopment resources back in 2014, 2015. Some of those things got accomplished, some didn't. Sending that out to you is what I'd like to do, because I think some of you have seen it, but many of you probably have not. And that's all that I have.
No, I'd appreciate that. I know when I assumed this position, I had trouble finding the bylaws, and it wasn't until Karen and I spoke, she's like, have you seen the strategic plan? And I'm like, nope, I have no idea. So that would be helpful for all of us.
Well, and some of us like me who've been around a while tend to think that it's, a few years old now, maybe it doesn't have as much applicability, but you got to go back and see what have we done? What have we not done? Are the bullet points still relevant for us to be pursuing? True. There was kind of a review and update. So I'll get that stuff out to you. That's all I have.
Andrew, are you good? I didn't see if you had your hand up or anything.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. And so, Steve, you have your homework cut out for you for upcoming items.
There's a lot going on, and it's good stuff. So I'm with it.
Were you going to say something else?
No, I'm just ready for the next item.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, our next meeting would normally be Thursday, March 7th. We've already agreed that we're not going to meet that day because we're going to encourage as many of you as we can to go to the housing summit down in Wisconsin Rapids. So we have to find another meeting date. And I guess my suggestion would be maybe other date in that week is possible, or else we can look at another week. What's your thought? It's a Tuesday? Works? That'd be
March
good for
5th.
people?
I'm good with March 5th. Is everybody
Not
good
good?
with March 5th?
What time? Same time?
Same time.
Probably same
March
time.
5th.
Ken's saying he's not available. Anybody else not available?
Let me check. I might not be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not great because I might have to cover a hearing that day.
Okay.
How about early the next week?
Tuesday, March 12th.
How about that day?
March 12th work okay? All good with March 12th?
I'm good.
Okay.
You got a hearing that day too? How about the 13th?
Yeah. I can do the 13th, yes.
13th?
Wednesday the 13th?
Going once, going twice.
Sold?
There is court.
In the morning?
When do they start?
I don't.
14th?
And is that
I know they're trying to. Should we just do
Lord, help us all.
Mary Jo, should we just do a poll on the side?
Just send
doodle
something
poll.
out. Yes. We had 3 minutes.
right.
That's all right. Just send something out. I think, yeah,
All right, thank you.
we just need a quorum from everybody. So it's not going to be perfect, but as long as we have a quorum. So we can manage it on a Saturday at 1 o'clock. I think we can figure it out during the week, right? All right. I move to adjourn. All right. Second, and we are adjourned.
As you read